Subscribe to our YouTube channel for in-depth interviews of India Inc. and press the bell icon so that you do not miss our updates.
Hello and welcome to Nirmal, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Hiral Dadia. We have with us Mr. M.S. Unnikrishnan, industry expert, joining us. Welcome to the show, Mr. Unnikrishnan. And you've been with the industry for I don't know how many decades I should count now, and you clearly know the kind of situation that we've been facing. You have seen the ups and downs that we've already passed through as well. How would you describe the current emergency situation, especially with regards to the pandemic, where there is, non-availability of beds, medicines, oxygen, etc.?
Well, this is something which I've never witnessed in 38 years that I worked in the industry at various levels. I've seen ups and downs which are economic in nature. And first and foremost, we faced it for almost a year and was coming out of that. That's what we thought about. And the resurfacing of that is going to have a major impact. Now, taking on what you mentioned about related to the disease itself and the kind of situation that India is in, I think I will have to blame three sets of people, or maybe sets of issues which are related. First and foremost, the complacency of Indians. Because when we saw that vaccine is available to India, which is not available to maybe more than 150, 160 countries didn't have vaccines on their own. Even today, if we really talk about only 3 or 4 countries have produced on their own, maybe they have manufacturing facility in other places. So we had that complacency. We have vaccine. We have the largest vaccine making capacity of the world ensconced over here. And thankfully for us in the first wave, the death rate was very low and transmission rate was not so dangerous the way it is witnessed by Italy, the UK, or some of the European countries, or even America for that matter, Brazil, all of them. So we escaped that one. So people threw caution to the wind and started, not wearing masks. If at all, if they have it, it's on the neck, not on the right place. So COVID appropriate behavior, which is expected from a society like India, did not really happen. That's point number one. My first, I blame people for it, not the government. Second is, of course, the government, both at the center as well as in the states. People may misbehave, but to get the order back in and the forward planning and thinking for the society is to be done by the governments. It has miserably failed on both the sides. Despite having that parallel available of other countries already undergoing second wave and the kind of proportion, sense of proportion that can happen, we were highly unprepared for that second wave. And third, of course, is not within the control of either the government or the people, is a double mutant variant which India encountered and which has come out from India itself, which means the Indian autoimmune system may not be resistant to that. And now there is a fear of a triple mutant virus possibly evolved out of Vidarbha region, and studies are going on. And this again, let me say very openly that we have never done a genome study on this. When you have a viral attack of this kind of a pandemic nature, as much as you are taking care of that, scientific analysis of the genome is a must for it. Otherwise, the vaccine that you're making and the treatment protocol that you're planning to make will be absolutely good for nothing. I mean, it can be as good as maybe water injected to your body in case if you don't study the variant on that. So these are the three reasons I would put across. Now, everybody's, I'm sure, seized upon, right from top to bottom in the country. All of us are seized upon. So since the country is aware of it, I'm sure it will be brought under control. At what cost is the question? How much will it cost the country to bring it back to normalcy for the amount of inaction that the society and the government put together has brought upon ourselves? So that's a take on that.
Right. So with this, another major concern right now, Mr. Unnikrishnan, is the non-availability of oxygen. Now, different states are trying to get it from different regions now. What do you make of this, and how do you think that the government should handle this situation?
We had been in consultation with the government as industry body at the highest of the levels, and also the operating level with the ministers and the various secretaries for the past maybe almost from the time when the things have started becoming publicly known that way. First and foremost, let me clarify to you that oxygen is not such a big problem. It is availability and reaching it to the right place is the problem. To be precise, pre-COVID days, India used approximately around 1,000 to 1,200 tons at the peak maximum of medical grade oxygen per day. And we used to produce another, say, 3,500 per day for the industrial application, predominantly in the steel industry, then the refineries, and various other glass and fabrication, manufacturing, all of them put together. Well, we were already having around 5 to 6,000 ton worth of capacity available. Part of that is not even fully utilized. So we have been able to rise the production to 7,500 tons per day from the earlier maybe 4,500 in the past 1 week itself. And now the next question is that sufficient? For the current oxygen demand of India, 7,500 may be sufficient. Maybe we'll have to increase a little more, which we are capable, and I'm sure we'll bring it on board also. But the biggest challenge is converting the industrial grade oxygen into the medical grade. It is now great scientific change to be done, a minor modification to be done that is already being done by all the capacities in the country, number one. Second, this is in a liquid form that we can transport it. Whereas in a steel industry, for example, Tata Steel, JSW, they produce oxygen and directly consume in their furnace in a gaseous form. So you'll have a liquefaction done. So that's an addition to be done over there. And next thing is for transporting in bulk, you need to be having bullets, which can be at containing at cryogenic negative temperature. And that's not in sufficient supply for this quantum that you're talking about. And similarly, even if you're able to transport in bullets, how many hospitals in India may have an ability to accept a bullet and then take it into the piping system and distribution? Most of them are used to having the cylinder, which you see in that black colored metallic cylinder. That again, there is a shortage of that going to be, because we had a system in prevalence. Nobody in the country, right from top to bottom, in hospitals, administration, nobody had ever expected that the demand is going to be going from 1,000 tons to all the way to 6,000 tons. So that's where the issue is. But let me be open with you that the industry body and industries are so forthcoming. Today, 700 tons of oxygen, liquid oxygen, is supplied by Reliance for no cost to the state of Gujarat, to Maharashtra and Madhya Pradesh, and they are willing to supply everywhere else. Jamshedpur is supplying, Visakhapatnam steel plant. In fact, a train is left from Bombay with 7 of those trucks having the bullets to Visakhapatnam, got filled with the liquid oxygen. It's on the way back to Maharashtra right now. So the industry is going out of its way and they're doing it free. And we are creating extra capacity also in anticipation that things may go up, even the cases may go up, that we're making it. So oxygen is a temporary issue, but logistics have to be taken care of. And one more suggestion that we gave to the government at this point of time is that at least in, say, maybe places like, say, maybe Gujarat, why you want to have the jumbo facilities now created in Ahmedabad? Go and create it in Gandhinagar and transport patients over there, because then you don't need to have the logistics management done. And the hospitals can be, it's a temporary hospital. You can shift it anywhere later if you're wanting that way. So we need to have ingenuity and creativity and innovation even in this point of time with the limited resources available. How will we protect the lives? And I think, cases are out of control. Death is out of control right now. I'm not justifying any of this.
Correct.
But is it going to be totally off the mark where it happened in some countries I'm not naming? I doubt will it reach to that proportion. But for the size of population that we have, we already at maybe a 3.15 lakh cases. Will it reach a 500,000? Can become. The death which is today hovering around 2,200 will reach to 3,000, 4,000, maybe even 5,000. Possible to happen that way. But that will have to be arrested thereafter. So in a peaking which is going to happen the next maybe few weeks, in my opinion, I would love to have the peak happening in a week's time. But mathematics says that it may even go up to maybe 2 or 3 weeks' time. Thereafterwards, we should be able to bring it back. I would say 60 days down the line, it would be coming back under India's control. I mean, Indians will be in control of that. Unforeseen circumstances can be there. This is my take on the entire
Right. So, Mr. Unnikrishnan, with this, do you think lack of infrastructure is also a major issue right now in the country to deal with the pandemic? And what, according to you, would be the best way to control the current situation?
In my opinion, there is a short-term, medium and long-term needed. Blaming the infrastructure is only a word, but it's not going to be helping us. with the infrastructure in place and with the money in place and the will that is available to the country, what can we do? First and foremost, emergency facilities have to be created. First, I will say that transmission has got to be stopped. That is in the hands of people. The virus doesn't go and infect somebody. People go and bite.
Right.
So it is depending upon the COVID appropriate behavior of Indians. And that chance can't be taken, and we have to become disciplined. We cannot put pressure on the government after getting infected. So not to get infected is not a government job, it's the individual job. So first and foremost, disciplining, enforcing, because we don't have an enforcement capability. For example, the city of Bombay that we're sitting, the total police force, the municipal force, all of them put together will not be even maybe 1 for 1,000. So how will you control 1 person, 1,000 people? It's impractical to do that way. It has to be self-discipline. So otherwise the government will have to go for maybe a total lockdown, which will be crippling the economy. If the economy is crippled, no income available to do the treatment. So chicken or egg situation. So first is that I would say we need to take care of that. Within the infrastructure available, we need to have more and more self-help systems created in localities instead of having a centralized control. We are a very, very large country. Let me clarify to you one. The COVID problem, even for a vaccination that we talk about, India is total of Europe, total of America, Brazil, and maybe I would say some more maybe South American countries put together is India's population. So how many governments are managing this problem? The American government, the European government, the British government, the Brazilian government, all put together. What they are doing has to be done by one prime minister and maybe 30 chief ministers, and the thing available, and the $2,000 per capita income, not $60,000 per capita income. So we need to have that clarity that government cannot come to the help. So people taking care of it, and local self-help groups to ensure that first is a protocol is maintained, to ensure that transmission is brought down. Second, we need to be very clear that with the facilities available, how do we have distributed facility instead of crowding happening in larger hospitals? You go to any hospital where vaccination is happening today. Anybody, elder person go for vaccination is bound to come back with the infection. So you have to segregate the vaccination centers.
Correct.
And it is okay in the beginning when there were not too many patients. Today, every hospital is converted into a COVID hospital. So there are thinking needed on these areas. Next thing is, we already made 18 years and above to be available, allowed for vaccination. Based on the 2 vaccines manufactured in India, even including the extra capacity available, it is going to be at least maybe 500 to 600 days of vaccination thing. So now we need to be having Sputnik cleared. It's already cleared. Manufacturing of that is going to start. Cadila has got to, Citus has got to come with theirs. And we'll have to allow Moderna, Pfizer to come to India. With all that put together, the total vaccination of India is sufficient for a herd immunity. It's around 70% of the population, let me say. We are talking about at least maybe December, January can go all the way up to March. So till that time, we cannot lower our guard at all. So Indian population, Indian people, taking care of that and working along with the industry and the government to ensure that we bring it under control. If we're able to manage it, we'll be able to reduce the death. There is possibility for a 3rd wave. Many countries have had 4th wave also. So now this is a journey for the country, not for an incident or maybe a short while. That is something which you've got to get used to. We are going to get used to. That is about my take on.
Right. So with this, what's the kind of impact you see on the economy? Because yes, there are partial lockdowns that are happening across. The center is not really agreeing to do a full lockdown for obvious reasons that it will have a real negative impact on the economy. So how do you see it impacting growth from here on?
See, the organized industry of India has already found ways and means of working and surviving and managing and growing through the pandemic. You look at the Q2 and Q3 and Q4 of the last financial year, how we have picked back, and the pandemic is still around. So all the protocols we maintain to run the manufacturing organizations already learned by the industry. It's already been practiced also. Not that there are no infections, but with the infections also, every manufacturing facility has already increased the physical distancing between 2 workmen in the manufacturing units. Offices have got redesigned, and many of the work got work from home paradigm shift already happened. So larger organizations have already gotten into that. So I don't expect them to be unduly impacted by the even pandemic or the current situation, the worst situation. We are still running the organization. Second is the infrastructure and ecosystem, which is a secondary industry, which is the MSMEs, who are the feeders into the main industry. Not all of them are in a good condition. Many of them are yet to be recovering financially from the last wave itself. And so we will have to be going ahead with the number one, how to protect people in that area. Fortunately, the exodus is not as bad as the way it happened of the labor last time. And many industries are taking care of it. I only hope that we are able to build in that confidence among the migrant population that it is worse for them to go back to their villages than remaining over here. But the industry has got to cooperate, especially the larger industry who will have to patronize MSME, along with the banking system, will have to ensure that the means of life are protected for those people and there is a safety available to them. And as quick as possible, the vulnerable like them are to be the first to be vaccinated, who cannot maintain a physical distancing. Those who live in a chord, in a room, 6 people living, I think they should be getting the first preference for a vaccination for their 18 to 45 years of age. Because the main manufacturing or working population of the country are not above 50. They may be the more vulnerable, but the ones who are needed to be working in the front line and who are the real carriers of this one virus, those who keep mobility on, they keep moving, are the people in this particular age bracket. As the vaccine comes, I'm a votary who says that we already taken care of the elder people, continue taking care of them. But equal focus should be given to the main manufacturing, producing workforce. If you are able to take care of that and the means of life being taken care of, then we will be able to assuage their fear. With that, even the MSME orientation and financial support I mentioned about, banking system and the parental organization, larger ones, in their value chain as good support. But still, we will not go unscathed, Hiral. I'm very clear about the fact that at least maybe at 25 to 30% of the industry, for a period of maybe 45 days to 60 days, they will have a problem. Not that they're going to come down to a shutdown level, but there will be. For example, there are shortage of drivers today because many of them are migrant in nature. They have a fear. They are not the kind of people who live in one place. So many of them have started going. So today trucking is a bit of a difficulty, already started happening. Loading, unloading at the ports, at all the loading stations, interstate transportation, all of them are done by migrant labor.
Correct.
So some of them have started moving. So these are signs of difficulties going to happen. So we need to be addressing it, not to wait for the time last time it happened. But industry is already aware of it. So we are all taking action on that. With that, the entire impact, my take is, many of us thought that we are going to grow by 11.5% in the current year. No, it won't happen. Let's be open. The kind of anticipation that we have in our mind, it will impact that by at least maybe 100 basis points. But if you are unable to control it, it can be much difficult for the country. We can even lose a 350 basis point of a GDP growth possibility in case if you don't really control it. So that's my take on the economy.
Right. And very lastly, with this, Mr. Unnikrishnan, you are playing a larger role in the startup ecosystem already right now. Do you think the situation is really bad for them? That's number one. And number two, with regards for growth to happen, private sector capex is something that needs to pick up, but we've not seen that pick up, So how difficult the situation going to be?
Startup, I would look at it as an opportunity. They are bootstrapped in any case. And they don't need huge ecosystem for a growth. It is intellectual. What is a startup fundamentally? It's an idea germinated. You are incubating it and the child is getting born and then looking after the child. It's the best time to, in any case, you need protected atmosphere. So I don't think the startup per se, the brains will not stop functioning. And that small gathering which is needed to do that. And there is no shortage of money for startups. So that way, I don't. Yeah, the startups which are on a growth level, the scale up will get postponed, maybe delayed by some time. But that I'm sure they are capable. In fact, the opportunities which are thrown up, which were not in existence yesterday, a lot more newer ideas which are needed to survive and coexist with a virus around is a startup idea in every sphere of activity of life. Yeah, so those are newer business ideas getting created. So it is I would say a very fertile ground getting created because business shift is something which is going to be good for the ecosystem for the startups. Though I mentioned specifically those who are on a multiplying kind of a platform, that I mean, the growth of maybe 10x expected in 3 years, well, they may have to slow down for a shorter period of time. Second that you had asked about is, so that's I mean, both ways. For startup, I don't think it's going to be getting impacted. And in fact, I'm in touch with multiple of them. And I mean, I'm sure they're all utilizing this time. I don't think they're unduly worried about it. If the money were to dry out for startups, that is the funding from the angel investors, venture capitalists, private equities, then there will be a problem. But none of them have ever complained. It is in the recent past. Even during the last, this also, it didn't happen that way. So that I would say. Next thing that you had asked about was about
so the next thing
private
capex.
capex. See, private capex is always a herd mentality. So the pent up capital expenses by the private industry was opening up by, say, maybe I would say October, November, December, January, and part of February. There was a positive movement happening already. Many projects were coming, even smaller ticket size, even larger ones. I mean, I've heard none of us ever thought about cement industry is going to be, I mean, across the country wanting to be expanding. Steel industry started doing very well. So they are talking about expansion. All that, knowing well in Indian kind of a psyche, when the comfort feeling is going to be slightly discomforted, there will be a slowness in that one. So there will be a temporary impact. And especially that even a smaller level of a local lockdown means people will start living for a bare minimum requirements equivalent. So once you again withdraw back from purchasing, so the demand will contract again. As the demand is going to be contracting, capacity available is sufficient to take care of it. So capacity expansion, that is where the investments are coming in, can get delayed by a few months. I would give maybe a 2 quarters of delay to catch back. Say earlier, the way it is already starting to pick up, moving upwards, there will be a delay. Let's be clear. It is going to take a downward trend, but it's not going to be a year trend or not a 2 year, 3 year trend. A 2 quarters trend will be there and will catch back. Provided, again, I repeat it that way, we should be prepared for a third and fourth wave and coexisting with an appropriate behavior correction needed for the society to ensure that virus is going to stay with us for not they'll stay. But before, I mean, in the transition, you're going to be careful about that.
Right. And very lastly, Mr. Unnikrishnan, with regards to growth as well, the recovery that we saw from the third quarter to now, there is some bit of positivity that had started to creep in. But now that you have the second wave, do you think this growth will be sustainable, or do you think again we will see a repeat of what we saw in 2020?
No, 2020 won't be repeated. Certainly no, will not be repeated, because as a country, we are much more prepared than what it was in that particular aspect, 2020 time. Industries are better prepared. Banking system is better prepared. Human beings were prepared, but then they let it loose. Once they tighten, I think it will come back to normalcy the way it was earlier. But I told you, there will be human life lost. I'm sorry, not that one is demanding, one is wanting. With a lot of heavy heart, each one of us are feeling so bad. But well, it will happen for some time to happen. But that will not impact the economy growth of the country, because whatever said and done, it is a consuming society. You can't continue to be having a containment of consumption. It can be temporarily arrested. It will reopen. So growth path will continue for the country.
So growth is something that will continue from here on. Thank you, Mr. Unnikrishnan, so much for joining us on the show. As always, a pleasure to speak to you. Thank you so much. Stay safe, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as well. Speak to you soon again.
Thank you. Thank you, Hiral. Thank you.